Breakups can be some of the most traumatic experiences we go through in life. Recently, I've been helping a friend and client build a program to rehabilitate himself from a particularly traumatic breakup with a very long-term girlfriend. In doing so, after feeling some relief, my client asked if I could make this video for other people because it may help others. Although I don't consider myself an expert in this field at all, in this video I'm going to give you the thoughts of a biohacker on how to potentially avert some of the most destructive elements of a breakup and rehabilitate yourself. Before I do, please subscribe to the channel, like the video if you haven't already, and leave a comment for the sake of the algorithm. Now let's get started. First of all, intoxicating is never the solution. Take it from someone very experienced in this subject. If you intoxicate more than a couple of times after a breakup, though it may avert the pain that you're feeling at the time or attenuate the amount of emotional suffering you're going through acutely, it somehow inhibits healing. What I've noticed from myself and others, if they intoxicate too much after a traumatic event in their life, they never fully accept that event. So later you may find that you have nagging, ruminating thoughts about the subject and so on. Intoxicating is never the solution. While using pharmacology can be helpful, instead of looking toward drugs, you should really, I think, try to focus on rebuilding your self-esteem, which is usually something that suffers during a breakup. My second tip is to break the positive feedback loop. You see, in life, when males experience losses, their hypothalamuses produce less gonadotropin releasing hormone, thereby in the end producing less testosterone in their bodies. As a consequence, having less testosterone makes you less resilient, less aggressive, less determined. And so this is what we call in systems engineering a positive feedback loop. You don't have to, but it's very helpful to break that positive feedback loop. In particular, I think that going on something like testosterone replacement therapy is too risky for somebody that was already natural. There's no reason to put your gonads, your testicles, at risk of not working properly again. Instead, using a short-term course under the treatment of a doctor of HCG combined with recombinant FSH, so for example, between 2,000 to 2,500 units of HCG and between 50 to 75 units of recombinant FSH every other day, with potentially some use of an aromatase inhibitor to make sure that your estradiol stays between 15 and say 30 in the US metric. This will do two things. First, it will give you more resilience, more determination, less of a likelihood of being down on yourself. But second, it'll improve your sex drive and erectile function, which is something that usually suffers during a breakup if somebody is genuinely depressed. The increase in sex drive is useful because it'll enable us to do the next step that I'm going to talk about. But before I do, I also highly recommend during this phase that people begin pumping and consider using under doctor's supervision tadalafil, which is Cialis, or Cialis in combination with doxazosine. I like to, for example, use between 2 to 5 milligrams of Cialis and 4 milligrams of doxazosine in combination. And you can also pump at the same time. Watch my video on pumping to get some guidelines. You want to start slow, but the value of this is to have very strong erectile function. This is important for the next step again. My third tip is don't be alone for long. Now, if you're a romantic like I am inside, and you really suffered a genuine loss in the breakup, you may feel that being with someone else, it feels almost like cheating. It's something you really don't want to do. You don't want to go date other people. Nonetheless, if that relationship is truly over, if you don't see other people in the short term, you will leave a larger negative imprint on your psyche from the breakup. What I suggest instead is to use modern technology to your advantage. In 15 years ago, if you broke up with someone, you'd have to develop the charisma and look happy enough to be able to go pick someone up at a bar or somewhere, or to meet someone through a friend, and you'd have to. It's a little bit more difficult than what you can do now. Now, with apps like Hinge and Tinder and Bumble, you can access, thousands of people quite quickly. So if you use these apps well, like right now, it seems that Hinge is the ideal app. You need to buy the premium version. You need to have a woman look over your pictures to make sure they're the best pictures for you. Because honestly, if you're not gay, you can't tell as a man which picture looks best for you between several set of pictures. So you need a woman to help you, and you may need some advice on crafting a good bio. So for example, when I used to use these apps, women would often match with me and say, I would have never swiped for you had it not been for your bio. So you need a very good bio, you need good pictures, and you need to devote the time there, because it's the easiest way to find high quality women. Because if your friend set you up with someone or you went to a bar, not only would you potentially being depressed inhibit the ability to talk to the girl, which is easier to talk to someone on text when you're depressed. But second of all, you could only meet as many girls as you could meet. On Hinge, you could potentially see or go through 1,000 girls and pick the 4 or 5 most interesting ones out of those, thereby having the most luck at genuinely interesting yourself while you're actually missing your girlfriend. At least this way you could find a few girls, not just one, and you just be honest with them from the beginning that you're seeing more than one person. Never lie to you always have to be honest. But if you have a couple of girls you're seeing, you can distract yourself. You can lessen the amount that you feel the empty space of your girlfriend in your life. And you can also have some fun. You should try to have some fun. It'll be much easier to do so when you have the sex drive that comes from the HCG, the FSH, and so on. Now, initially, when you go on your first couple of dates, especially the first couple of times you have sex, if you've really went through a traumatic breakup, you're going to perform very poorly. So you should keep that in mind, understand that, and just be honest with the people you date. And you could plan it such that the first couple of people you meet are not like the most important people you're dating. So you can get those awkward ones out of the way. And then try to, over time, collect very interesting people. Treat them as friends. Tell them, you'll be serious with them if it comes to that point. But for right now, you're just being friendly. You'd like to meet people and so on. And you can go out, meet different people, hang out with their friends, and feel a sense of community and companionship and see that there are other girls out there. That's what you want to show yourself. There are other high-quality girls out there. My fourth tip is to build self-esteem. If your relationship really took you to dark places in the breakup, you may have lost respect for yourself or self-esteem. In the sense that, for example, even if you have not done something bad, just loving someone and them leaving you will reduce your esteem for yourself. So you have to rebuild it. And I've had to rebuild my self-esteem many times in my life. I've learned some things about it, interestingly. Self-esteem is esteemable action done repeatedly. Now, what is esteemable action? It's different for you and it's different for me. If you don't know what you esteem, maybe because you got lost in this relationship, your values came from her and, something like that, think back to when you were a child. The childhood you, who did he look up to? Even if it's comic book superheroes or people in your life, your dad, who did you look up to and what did you look up to in them? So for example, when I was a child, I really looked up to people that were honest and that sacrificed for others. And one thing I was really obsessed with, protecting the weak. I really admired people who protected the weak and the people who protected the disenfranchised in society and so on. So when I lost my self-esteem, I tried to enact those qualities in my daily life. I made sure I was always honest. I tried to take care of the weak. For example, what I did particularly, I spent a lot of time teaching like underprivileged children. And you find a charitable society, go spend some time. As you do the work, as you do what you esteem, slowly, whether you like it or not, you're going to start to respect yourself. You're going to start to know what kind of man you are and rebuild that self-esteem. And it's necessary to have that self-esteem to have a successful relationship. If you have a hole in your ego or in your self-esteem, you will try to fill it with the people around you. You'll be more likely to be, for example, attracted to girls that don't like you as much or play it hard to get or whatever. And that's a sick kind of relationship. You want to have self-esteem and have someone else who has self-esteem and appreciate each other instead of trying to fill each other's holes in your souls. You know what I mean? The final tip, if the emotional pain is too intense, there is a lot that pharmacology can do for you in the short term, not just in the long term, to limit the amount of pain and suffering you feel for the next 6 months to 2 years. But I hesitate in offering any kind of advice on this subject because people's brains are so different and respond so differently to medications. And in the case that someone is truly depressed or, for example, suicidal, using the wrong medication may tip them off the edge in another way. Or using a medication incorrectly, for example, using too high a dose initially with an SSRI or with lithium or something like that. So I hesitate to comment on this subject. I have other videos on this subject, but just know that in addition to HCG, FSH, and that kind of stuff for your sex drive and your testosterone, there are equally powerful things that can make you resilient. So for example, one of the most resilient combinations for people going through difficult times in their life is to have higher testosterone levels and higher serotonin levels. They work sort of opposingly, but so for example, an SSRI with TRT together produces one of the most resilient personalities possible. So just know that there are pharmacologic interventions. You should talk to a psychiatrist if you want to consider using one. Anyway guys, I hope this was helpful. I know it was a bit brief. Let me know if you like these sorts of videos and if you learned anything useful from it. And if you didn't, I'm sorry for being long-winded. Thank you guys. See you next time.